Hi, my name is Rich Goldbrecker, and I wanted to give a quick talk about passwords. As developers, we're going to be involved making websites and applications that are going to use passwords as authentication, and it's our responsibility to ensure user safety through those passwords. And we're also going to have many, many accounts that have passwords associated with them that we use to authenticate. Also, they're terrible. So why are they terrible? I kind of wanted to explore this by going through a journey creating a password with all of you. So I have a theoretical account, and I want to make a password for it. This is my password. This is not a bad password. This is an awful password. What you're looking at here is the winner of most popular password of 2016, and 2015, and 2014. Security firms release lists of most common passwords based on analysis of leaked passwords throughout the year. I'm referencing Splash Data's list here. So out of 5 million passwords that they tracked from last year, the top 25 accounted for just over 10% of all of those passwords. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 alone accounted for 4% of all of those passwords. As such, passwords that are found on these lists of leaked passwords are really bad to use because they're often the first vector used in trying to gain access to an account. As a quick side note, there's a website called haveibeenowned.com that you can go to. It indexes all of the usernames and emails associated with these data breaches, so you can use that to find out if your account's been compromised. So let's try something different. This is my cat's name. This is personal to me. Let's assume it's not on any of those lists. I'm going to remember this password, and it's really bad. This is easily found out personal information. I just told you all what my cat's name is. If I use this as a password anywhere, I deserve everything that's coming to me. This could be found out through just a very simple social engineering exercise. Google did a survey in 2013 to find very common personal passwords. Through that, they found that pets' names, significant dates like when you were married, family members' name, current partners' names were all common passwords. So don't do something that someone can find out by just going out for drinks with you once. Knowing this, let's do something completely different. This is now my password. This is better. It's gibberish. This password doesn't mean anything to me. It's alphanumeric with symbols. This matters because when you're doing a brute force attack to try to find out what a password is, it matters how complex the password is. In this case, to find out the number of permutations that a password can have, the formula is the character variations by the length. So the complexity of just an A through Z password, upper and lowercase, is 52 choices by 6, about 19 billion. The complexity of an alphanumeric password with symbols, say you have 94 choices there, is 680 odd billion. So that's a lot more. It's still not good enough, and there's another factor that matters far greater when it comes to password complexity. And we can illustrate this with another password. Let's assume for a moment that David Hasselhoff is one of my heroes, and I really want his surname to be my password. We already know this is a bad password. It might be in one of those lists of common passwords. It's very personal to me, theoretically. But in some ways, it's better than the one that we looked at previously. The complexity of the previous password is 600 odd billion. The complexity of a password like Hasselhoff, though, even though it's just A through Z characters, upper lowercase, is measured in the hundreds of quadrillions. This makes it much, much harder for a brute force attack to try to guess this password. So knowing that, we can combine both of these and make something really pretty. This is a password. Now we're getting somewhere. This is totally meaningless. It's wonderfully complex. Its complexity is measured in the duodecillions. This is a 40-character number to represent the number of permutations you could have with this, theoretically. So this is perfect, right? It's impossible to guess, impossible to crack. It's also impossible to remember. You're going to need to record it somewhere, and you're going to need to reference it every time you sign in. This isn't that big of an issue. There's tools that I'll mention later on that can help mitigate this problem. But let's assume for the moment that I'm just making a password that I want to remember for this hypothetical account. How about this? Salient frog hibiscus. Kind of garbage, but this is what's known as a passphrase. It doesn't really have any meaning to me, but it's a bunch of English or English-sounding words or language-sounding words that I can put in order, and it's far easier for me to remember. It has effectively the same complexity as the password we looked at previously. This one's also 20 characters, and it uses alphanumerics and symbols. Also, including those symbols and purposeful misspellings add to its resiliency to certain kinds of attacks, like chaining dictionary words together to try to guess passphrases. Oh, so that's great. We've just made a really good password. Both of the previous passwords for this one and the previous one are really good. But that doesn't solve our problem completely. We've made this account password. We have far more accounts, and all of those accounts need unique passwords. This ensures that if one password gets compromised, all the other accounts are secure still. You don't want to use the same password everywhere. But wasn't life way easier before we started thinking about this? When 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was our password everywhere, and maybe for our really secure accounts we used our cat's name? Now we have all of these complicated passwords. We're never going to remember them. How do we manage them? We can use a password manager. Password managers are encrypted stores where you can place account information and passwords to reference later. Those are also secured themselves with a root password to get access into it. There are a bunch out there, a couple of examples below that I highly recommend. Some of them come with some very neat functionality. They'll let you know the fitness of your password. If there was a breach, it may alert you that there's been a breach and you need to change your password. How long ago your password was changed. It can generate random passwords for you. And some of them even come with browser extensions that auto-log you into web pages that it recognizes securely. So that's it, right? We've solved passwords. Everything's good. As long as we use complicated passwords and password managers, everything's smooth sailing forever. Not quite. Password-based authentication is still problematic on its own. Password reset questions, to pull back for a moment, are typically awful. They're really easy to find out information, just as easy as my cat's name. So I could have the best password ever, but if you know things about me enough to answer 3 questions on a page, you can gain access to my account. Your email account or the password manager becomes a skeleton key. If either of those two get compromised, there's free reign on all the accounts associated with them, especially the password manager. Is your password being securely stored by the service that you're using? And passwords only provide a single factor of authentication. So can we make it better? And it turns out there are a couple of things we can do. One of them is better password reset question practices. As users, we can give more obtuse answers to bad questions to make it easier or harder for people to guess those. And as developers, we can ask better questions. Not something like, what's your mother's maiden name, but something much more specific or much harder to just fish from a social engineering attack. Then there's my favorite one, multi-factor authentication, requiring 2 or more factors of authentication to get into an account, typically your password and RSA key, provided by a text message, Google Authenticator or a similar smartphone app, or just an RSA key, a physical key fob that you'd have. This vastly increases the security of your account. I could tell you the password to my account right now if it has multi-factor authentication, and you wouldn't be able to get in. You'd still need that other factor to access it. So in conclusion, passwords are terrible when they're simple, not unique, and used alone. That's my presentation. Feel free to contact me on Twitter, email me, and this is my GitHub. I'll be putting the slides up there sometime after this talk. Thank you.